Well, this is the Primary Stages Off-Broadway Oral History Project. We are interviewing today actor, composer, singer Peggy Gordon. It is May 17, 2018. It is a Thursday. This is interview 134. And May 17th is the anniversary of what?
When Gospel opened at Cherry Lane Theater, so it's our anniversary. We always wake up every May 17th and we say to each other, "Are your knees sore?" And we say, "Yeah, yeah." And this is like umpteen years, but we still always celebrate May 17th. So how awesome that we're doing this today. It's great.
Where did you grow up, Peggy?
Okay, I'm going to really clean this up. Long Island, which I said was visually beautiful, but for me, it was a stop on the Long Island Railroad. I could not wait to leave.
And
See how I did that? I didn't insult the people who lived in Long Island. I kind of said that weird.
Where on Long Island?
Well, this is interesting. It was not technically Westbury. There was Old Westbury. It was not technically East Meadow. It was in some sort of no man's land, somewhere in between. I'm moving my hands around because it was called Westbury, but it wasn't Westbury. That Westbury was on that side of the train stop. I got up on this side of the train stop. So that's why I'm saying for me it was a stop on the Long Island Railroad. I thought, I don't know where I am, but I can't wait to get out of here.
And did you see plays in Westbury?
No, although a friend of mine was, oh, thank you, I didn't write that down. A friend of mine was an usher at the Westbury Music Fair.
Yes.
So what I mostly got to see were music concerts, which were amazing. I got
The
to
concerts.
see, yes, Dave Brubeck play Take Five. I got to see that, and I got to whatever that was a good famous thing, and I got to see, I'm blanking on his name now, he was a famous Crazy Alan something, play the harmonium and chant, and so I mean there was a huge eclectic mix of fascinating things at the Westbury Music Fair, but not nearly enough for me. So I thought, okay, I can't wait till I get on the train and go there.
And when did you start going there?
Okay, so this is out of order, so we'll just be like,
Yeah, sorry.
I started going there after I was 15. And I know what these notes are, so basically we are jumping out of order, but it's okay. My mother knew that I really wanted to learn how to act because she introduced me to Broadway shows when I was a pre-adolescent. I got to see things, and I don't want to create like a firestorm of, the rating system, because now I don't think you can take children to see Gypsy if they're under the age of 12. I got to see everything. Yeah.
What were the early shows you saw?
The first one I saw, I must have been 4 or 5. I can't honestly remember the show, but it was with Don Amici and Elaine Stritch. I looked it up, and it was a fantastic blur, but it was the first Broadway show I saw, and all I remember thinking was, wow, as a child, just wow. And then the one that was extraordinary a few years after that was Gypsy. And this is an amazing story. It's a true story. My mother was sitting in the last row of the orchestra section. She was sitting on the aisle seat. I was sitting next to her. And the opening, after the overture opened, and there were all these children on stage. And I just went, I just couldn't, there were children on stage who were like my age. And I didn't know that was possible. I mean, TV shows, of course, I had seen. Films, yes, but in the show, there were children, like me. But there was this giant woman standing next to my mother. She was just standing there. It was very annoying because I was trying to focus on this, and this woman was fidgeting. She was standing next to my mother, and she was fidgeting, and then suddenly she screamed out, "Sing out, Louise!" And of course,
It was awful.
Barreled down the stage, and it was like, actually, there was like somebody like she's up on the stage now. Like, Mommy, look, listen to the woman, and she's up on the stage now. The woman was yelling, "Sing out, Louise!" And that was it. That was like magic. And so I remember, unlike the show that I saw before that with John Amici and Elaine Stritch, which I can't tell you, it was just like a blur. I remember every second of that production of Gypsy, every second of her, Jack Klugman. I fell in love with Sandra Church. I remember every second where things were positioned. Sandra Church's rendition of The Lamb. I mean, that was it for me. So my mother knew after that. And then I got to see Sound of Music with Mary Martin. Actually, every show with children. Every show with children. I got to actually meet the children who were going to be in Fiddler before the show opened on Broadway. But that was it. So when I was in junior high, my mother found a program at Adelphi University for kids, 2 nights a week that would teach you acting, voiceovers, and I did that for 2 years. And then when I was 15,
In New York. Or
that was on Long Island.
on Long
Adelphi
Island.
University is on Long Island. Then still Long Island, Gateway Playhouse when I was 15. Because my mother knew this was not a phase. This was something that I really wanted to do. And then I spent the summer at Gateway Playhouse, training in the morning, rehearsing in the afternoon for both studio productions and the nighttime productions as a 15-year-old. And then I met the person who changed my life. He and his brother, Mark Epstein, and his brother, Alvin Epstein, who were very famous in New York theater at that time. And Mark just said, you really want to do this? I said, I don't love anything else but this. This is what I love.
What was Mark doing?
He was directing.
He was directing at the Gateway?
Yeah.
And where was the Gateway?
It was all the way out in Suffolk County. I'm going like this because I was in Nassau, so Suffolk is there. And, I spent the first 17 years of my life in Long Island. If you were to ask me where that is, Nassau, Suffolk. That's all I know. I lived here. Gateway was out there. And
Gateway was primarily musicals?
Primarily musicals, although in the studio production we did plays. We did Lilium, and I had the lead, and that was it. And Mark directed me in that. He just said, you're good. Do you want to do this? I said, yeah, I want to do this. He spoke to my parents, and he just said, I can sponsor her to go to the neighborhood Playhouse Junior School. They were programmed for teenagers on the weekends. She'll get all the same teachers that are teaching, the people who go to the regular school, the senior school, and my mother, again, she made it happen. So every weekend I spent.
And when you were at the neighborhood playhouse, who were the teachers?
Florence Winston, who was a founding member of Jill Papp's Theater. She, in the 1950s. So her love of off-Broadway. She has 1 Broadway credit, I think. Otherwise, it's all off-Broadway. And she was amazing. And then Irma Juris was a singer, an incredible singer, who taught me how to sing at the age of 15. Because before then I'd been, kind of fooling around with that. And then my dance teacher was, she was with the Martha Graham. Her name I can't remember. In fact, I emailed one of the women who'd been in my class. And I said, do you remember her name? She said, I remember her. Who could forget her? But we can't remember her name. She was so wonderful, our dance teacher. But that was it. I did that for 2 years on the weekends. And then, so that's when I said to my parents, why am I going to college for this? It's crazy. I already have all of these contacts that I made through the neighborhood playhouse. I'm 17 years old. This is crazy. I should stay here in New York, go to the senior school, audition. But they said, no, you got into Carnegie Mellon University, which was the best school at the time. This was a year before Juilliard started. They said, go there, and the rest is fate. Because although I learned nothing, aside from Edith, I learned nothing. I learned more when I went to ACT after my sophomore year at Carnegie. I went there for the summer.
After an ACT, then was San Francisco.
Right, okay, so after my sophomore year at Carnegie, where I learned nothing, aside from Edith. I mean, I have to say it. I mean, the acting was Morty Lawner. Bob Parks was teaching voice. I'm sorry. Paul Drake was such a sweet man, but I had astonishing dance teachers for years, ever since the age of 3. So I thought to my parents, as I said to my, I said, used to send the letters home, here's how your money was wasted each week. And so I've spoken to Peter. Peter knows all this, so I don't feel terrible saying this now, because now Carnegie's so wonderful. We'll say that. So I went to ACT for the summer because they were teaching things that I hadn't been getting at Carnegie. And then amazingly, at the end of the summer, we were given a chance to audition for the company. They needed 16 journeyman actors. I was 19. I thought, what the hell? Yeah, sure. I auditioned and I got in.
And you got in. So
I was like, should I go back to Carnegie for my junior year or stay in ACT with all of these astonishing actors?
2 years at Carnegie.
Yeah.
And then you went for the summer, and obviously the ACT was then Bill Ball, and did you know them? And Renee Bourgeois and Sidney?
I was there with Renee Bourgeois, Ellis Rabb,
Right.
Oh my God, Bill Ball, whom I loved. He was
Yeah.
eccentric, but he was brilliant.
Yeah.
I wrote in here just sitting in the audience and watching him direct and being directed by him. He was amazing. Ellis and Renee were, I mean, the whole company, I was 19. I was adopted, basically, and taken care of. Michael Leonard, Michael Leonard and Katie Wynn, who wound up being Panic Amelia Park. I mean, just the whole company of actors were so wonderful. And kind of being the baby of the group was and because Bill was a Carnegie person, there were so many Jeff
Did you
Chandlers
know
there.
any of these people from Pittsburgh or not? You did.
No, I met them when I went there.
Because I think they started Pittsburgh, went to New York, and somehow ended up in San Francisco.
Yeah, which was amazing because they had the 2 theaters
and they were working out of the Geary.
The Geary, and I forget the name of the other one. It was a second theater, a smaller theater, where they did more modern plays, but it was just amazing. And then we toured. We also did things in the area. So there was the productions at the Geary, there were the productions at the other theater, and then we would also tour around the area. But it was amazing because I would, I basically, my parents were hysterical, but I said, you know what, there's a speech teacher here named Jane Hill, who's a protege of Edith's. I said, so I'm picking up basically in Edith's book exactly where I left off. I'm not missing anything. I said, plus I'm getting dance with a real dance teacher. And the directors who were there, Nicole Jackson, I mean, there were directors there who changed my life.
Yeah.
They had been like
Alan Hastings. And,
yeah, they changed my life. They were so brilliant and they were so sane, and I learned so much. And
now, going back for 1 second to Long Island and the early years,
if we have to,
you did see Rosemary Harris and Robert Preston in.
Right. Okay. So picking up from the musical threads, it was musicals, and then I said to my mother, "So they do any plays in these? Did they do any plays?" And she took me to see Lion in Winter with Robert Preston and Rosemary Harris, and I think I remember sitting forward, all the way forward, and I couldn't breathe because it's so character-driven, that play. And on stage, in the film, obviously, they opened it up, but it's so character-driven. It's so tight with all the actors and performances, and you're basically in a room watching these brilliant performances. And the two of them were, I just didn't know that acting could be like that. I mean, it was amazing. So after that, that's when I saw.
And you saw Mostel and
everything with children. In other words, once my mother saw me, going crazy with Gypsy, then I saw everything. Mary Martin was amazing, Sound of Music, and Zara Mostel, of course, because they were the two little kids in Fiddler on the Roof, and then whoever was in Oliver. Everything with children. I got to see everything with children. So my first play with non-children was Lion in Winter, which was Rosemary Harris. I think
they're young. They're not, the boys are young, but they're not quite children.
No, but everything with kids. My mother, and again, there were no, same with films at the time, although I don't want to get this to be controversial, but there were no age restrictions. So I saw all sorts of things that children can't see now, like the Pawnbroker as a child. I mean, I saw a lot of things that you can't see as a child, and it didn't screw me up. Just the opposite. It kind of was like, wow.
Going back to Carnegie 1 second.
Sure.
While you were there, you participated in writing some projects, right?
Okay, so this is the sidebar because, as you know, and I wish I had known this before I went, because this would have served as part of my argument for not going, although I'm so grateful I did because of Godspell, but I will get there. I didn't realize that when you were in the acting program, that was it. And at the time, the old Fine Arts building, the music was right across from the Kresge Theater, and I used to just stand there looking at the grand piano. But I couldn't take any singing classes. I couldn't take any music classes. I couldn't take any playwriting classes. I couldn't take any. So if you're in the acting program, you had to do that program, which was very frustrating. So Jay Hamburger, Stephen Nathan, me, a few other people in the drama department.
These were classmates of yours.
Yes, sorry. Jay Hamburger is the other half by my side,
yes.
Which actually was originally Marigold Song, which I will explain in 2 seconds. Steve Nathan, of course, wound up playing Jesus and wound up being a major TV showrunner for years. he was a writer. And in addition to being an actor, Jay was also an incredible writer. Jay was writing a play called Marigold and Elgin. We thought, in a successfully clandestine way, a group called the Open Players, where we were working on our own stuff outside of the department. In the same way Stephen Schwartz had to do Pippin outside of the department, because Earl didn't allow that in the department.
Well, with Scotch and Soda.
Which was crazy. Yeah. But Scotch and Soda was not in the department. It was the engineering. Okay, so, which is why God says it's unbelievable that happened, but...
Was Stephen there when you were there?
He was a senior when I was a freshman.
He was a senior. Okay.
But because of the cut system, there were 7 people in the senior class, so we all knew each other. Yeah. We were very small, which is how we all knew each other, which is why we were so close. There were 50 people in my freshman class. When we came back sophomore year, there were 25. So. And then half of us didn't come back for a variety of reasons. I was at ACT. My friend Francesca James got One Life to Live, and she had soap opera. So it would dwindle by the time you were senior. There would be 7 people in the class. So there was Stephen and Herbie, Brahan. I can remember actually Laura Jefferson. There were a few other people. We all knew each other. We were all close. We were incredibly close.
So you wrote this song.
Okay, so we're going to have to edit this. Okay, so we had to do this outside of the department because the department was very rigid. So we formed this group called the Open Players. We actually had a huge wagon that opened out into a stage. We were going to go to the Appalachia for the summer and perform all these skits, and then Marigold and Elkin, and Jay was writing the play, and Steve and Nathan was writing skits, and I was writing songs, and we were all writing, and we were working on all the stuff in our spare time, which there was none, with doing everything in crews and all the other craziness that was going on, but somehow we did it. Well, I held down a job my freshman year, so I don't know how I did this. I was the misinformation girl in Skibo, as Andy Rory used to call me, the information girl, or we'd put misinformation together. But I would schedule all the rooms for rehearsal, so I would always schedule us a room to rehearse the Open Players, because we had to make sure that Earl Gester was the head of our department. He's not around anymore. Didn't know about it, although he did wind up finding out about it, and he threatened to throw us all out if we didn't abandon the project. So this is, believe it or not, Connexter by my side. So Jay walked into rehearsal one day writing this beautiful play, Marigold and Elgin, which was an Appalachian version of Romeo and Juliet. And he said, you know what, this monologue of Marigold's, I think it should be a song. He said, can you write music to it? I said, well, it's not in song structure. And I looked at it and went, yeah, sure, what the hell? And I did. And it was Marigold's song. And then... long story short, Earl kiboshed us. It didn't work out. The majority of the people who were involved in that project wound up going with John Michael to Cleveland. Steve Nathan went, so did Jay, to do a summer theater
for the summer.
Right, where John Michael did an astonishing version of McBird, which was so good. He came back and blew us all away with that. But again, he had to work on those things outside of the department too. And
John Michael is working as a director.
Yeah, he's just a director.
Right.
Not just a director, I shouldn't say that.
He's directing as an undergraduate student.
Yeah. He was technically in my class, We were so close. We're all so close. We're still all so close. It's ridiculous.
Didn't they do Italian Straw Hat and a couple other shows that summer?
Yeah.
And then, so then what happened? It was a freshman project. You'd written the song.
Yeah, so I put it in my guitar case and I forgot about it. And then fast forward, and we can go back if you want to, fast forward 2-3 years. Okay, so after ACT, I thought, because, all right. So I had asked Earl and Baker Salisbury, I said, so I got into ACT. Can I take that as my junior year? Because you're giving other people Lambda and Rada in London as their junior year. Can I have it as my junior year? Because basically I'm continuing with speech and I'm working with these brilliant directors like Bill Paul and I'm taking in acting and I'm blah, blah. They said no. I said, okay, bye. Girl, okay. And then, lucky for me, Peter knows the story. They were using ACT to audition for the next year.
West
They
Coast.
came in the spring. Yeah. And when they came there, Bill Ball said to Earl, thank you so much for giving us Peggy. Oh my God, she's such a wonderful addition to our company. We love her and her music. And blah, blah. I was like, all right. And so Baker said to me, okay, so we talked about it, and you can come back for your senior year. We'll give you credit for your junior year. So I was weighing, should I, because my parents, again, had not been to college. So I was trying to explain to them that a BFA is kitty litter. If I don't plan to teach or I don't plan to, it didn't make sense. I was already working. I just turned 20. I'm working in a professional company. I'm making 1 million contacts. This didn't make sense. So, but they were pretty adamant that you have an opportunity to go back for your senior year. So I was sort of weighing and measuring. And then John Michael called. And he said, I need you in New York. I need you here. He said, I did this thing at school and I have an opportunity to work on it at La Mama. And he said, I'm asking everybody I've worked with before who has the skill set for this. And I said, well, what is it about? And he said, he told me, and I just remember saying something like religion. It's not my favorite subject. Oh, and then he said, no, seriously, come. He said, you're in New York right now, because I come back to visit family. He said, come and at least, come see everybody. You haven't seen everybody for a year. It'd be great to see you. And I said, well, maybe I'll come and have a look at music. And then, of course, I came. And I will never forget that. It was January 18th. So needless to say, I didn't go back for my senior year. We were sitting, this is a year and a half after I'd left. This technically would have been my senior year. So I was sitting on the floor. I like to dramatize it, but truthfully, there was a rug and we were all sitting clustered. And everybody was like my best friends I hadn't seen in a year. Steve and Kilmer, everybody who I loved with all my heart and still do. And we were sitting in a little cluster, and John Michael was facing us. And he told us this heartbreaking story of why the raison d'etre behind Godspell. And very, very briefly, because there's a brilliant book called The Godspell Experience by Carol DeGear. I have to plug it because it's the only factually accurate book, even though I'm in all of them. It's the only one that's factually accurate, and it's a wildly entertaining read. She goes into much greater detail about the story, but the essence is John Michael was a deeply spiritual 20-year-old kid who went to an Easter Sunday church service and was deemed inappropriately attired by this community. So in addition to a service that was full of dogma, ritual, droning, very little spiritual sustenance, because he was deemed inappropriately attired, he was frisked by a parishioner who was an off-duty cop, because surely he must have just been a drug addict who was coming in out of the snow for whatever. So he walked out of there he was deeply upset, needless to say, with several burning questions, as he said to us. First, wasn't Jesus poor? Didn't he hang out with the poor? Wasn't he constantly addressing the needs of the poor? And where was the love thy neighbor as thyself love? So like millions of other Christian kids in the early 70s, which is one of the reasons why we got so much TV exposure, and I will hopscotch around a little bit because the show Hair actually had a lot to do with us 4 years later. When Hair opened on Broadway, very briefly after that, Martin Luther King was murdered. Then Bobby Kennedy was killed. And then there was the horror of the Democratic National Convention, which was painful to watch because of the kids being beaten in the park. Then Richard Nixon, the murders at Kent State. And as a result, we didn't lose our political idealism, but we felt very strongly we had to find something much deeper and less transient than shifting political winds. So many of us looked to Eastern religion to see if they had anything to offer, but millions of Christian kids like John Michael still wanted to find some spiritual sustenance in Christianity and couldn't find it in their churches. So the news media dubbed this particular movement the Street Jesus movement. And it was interesting during the Broadway revival that one of the reviewers from the New York Times did his homework and was talking about this, how the genesis of Godspell had so much to do with kids leaving their churches by the millions, hitting the streets, actually and metaphorically, stripping Jesus bare of all forms of church dogma and ritual to see if there was any spiritual substance in what he was purported to have said and done. John Michael wanted to go much further. He said, what about, after we have this prologue of these worldly philosophers spouting their crap, in conflict with each other because they all know what they know, and it's an inviolate truth, except this person disagrees with you. He said, we're going to have them erupt into a visual battle. He said, then there's going to be the blowing of a shofar. John the Baptist is going to come in. He's going to wipe you all clean, not just of knowledge, but of everything. You're going to come out You're going to come back in as pre-adolescent children who know nothing in a child's fenced playground, and we're going to play. And we're going to see if there's anything inherent in what Jesus is purported to have said and done that provides spiritual sustenance. And that is the singular raison d'etre behind God's will. Which is one of the reasons why I see so many productions now that don't understand that. Even though Stephen Schwartz has written the most brilliant author's notes in our original libretto, which synthesize John Michael's core concepts. That is what God's will is about. That's all it's about. It's not supposed to be used, excuse me, I've got to say this, as a platform for verbal commentary on pop or political culture. John Michael was adamant about that. Richard Nixon was president. Dear God, we had an endless amount of material if that's what he wanted. He did not want that. He said to us, that's what this is. You will come back in as children's iconic characters, clowns, and a superhero-styled clown in the person of Jesus, who can walk on water and perform miracles. He's going to teach you everything through play, and we will discover together whether there's any spiritual sustenance, which is one of the reasons why the review for the New York Times for the revival was excruciatingly painful to read, because I said to someone more than 75% of this could have been written by John Michael, because the reviewer was pointing to that as the deficiency of that production by basically saying...
Circle in the Square revival. The Broadway revival?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was very painful to read that review because I thought, oh my God, John Michael would be vomiting in his grave if you read this review. Because more than 75% could have been spoken verbatim by John Michael, who loved to talk. Because the reviewer said, if there isn't anything timeless in Jesus' teachings, then what's the point? Why do you have to make it relevant? If there is timelessness in spiritual teaching, in love, in behavior, in kindness, in generosity of spirit, why do you need to make something relevant by using it as a platform for verbal commentary and pop-up political culture, which he adamantly did not want to do? In fact, true story, since Richard Nixon was president, I just have to tell this one story. Carol also goes into much greater detail about this in the book. There was one Richard Nixon thing that we just Joanne Jonas and I were joking about this the other day. We tried to work it in a subliminal way, respecting John Michael's two caveats, which were, it cannot upstage the simple spiritual intent of the parable. It cannot obscure the simple spiritual intent of the parable. So we thought we worked it in a subliminal way. I think it was in the Richmond parable, and afterwards I was to Cherry Lane. He was sitting in the audience, and I can't remember who was sitting next to him. It was either our box office guy, Andy, or one of the musicians who didn't know Joanne. And so we turned to John Michael and we looked at him like, and he turned to this person. He said, "Can you tell me what that parable was about?" And the person said, "I'm not sure, but oh my God, that Richard Nixon bit was so funny." And John Michael said, "You just completely subverted the singular purpose of the show." And we went, "Okay, we got it."
So the Richard Nixon was out.
Character voices were okay, as long as they illustrated a character. So it was okay to use a Richard Nixon character voice, because clowns are nonverbal, which was a really interesting thing he tasked us with, because they communicate through amplified comedic behavior. So we had a ritual, which we started at La Mama. We would watch on Saturday mornings. They had silent movies, which would lead into, all the early 30s, Laurel and Hardy, Marx Brothers, Mae West, which is one of the reasons why, if you look at our original libretto, you will see the use of those character voices, because we thought, okay, we've got it, especially if you watch, oh my God, any of Charlie Chaplin's with Mabel Normand's, any of those silent movies from 1915, The Immigrant, 1917, there's a scene just in a coffee shop with the person sitting next to Charlie Chaplin who's just trying to eat soup. It's one of the funniest things I've ever seen in my life. You don't need any words. You get everything. Everything. So we said, okay, but we have to talk. And John Michael said, yes, but the behavior is the thing that communicates the comedy, and the words are subordinate to the behavior. So we said, so whatever you improvise in the way of dialogue is subordinate to the character, which will be communicated through behavior. So character voices were okay if a Richard Nixon character voice would indicate the greed or the corruption of the rich man. But no verbal commentary on popular political culture. If you look at our original libretto, there is none, and that's intentional. And I don't know how this has gotten so confused over the years, because now it's basically used as a platform for verbal commentary on popular political culture. The whole process of the characters being pre-adolescent children who know nothing, and are being taught every second of the way, as Robin Lamont used to say, are visibly discernible aha moments. Like, and then that would go into the song Well Good Gifts. Lamar, that was my favorite moment with him in the seed parable, where Steve Nathan would end with him, say something to Lamar, go, and that would take you into All Good Gifts. So there was a reason for everything. We used to say we would have our individual moments of revelation. We would pick what those moments were. So that's what the show was about. It's about children who know nothing and are about to be taught everything by this one to see, plainly and simply, is there any spiritual sustenance in what this guy is purported to have said and done. So getting back to ACT, I was sitting on the cold floor with my friends, listening to John Michael talk about this for 2 hours, and I went, yeah, all right, I'm staying. I can't not do this. I can't not do this. It was like, how can I not do this? I have to
Now, where did this conversation take place? You had left ACT, you come back to
I came back to New York briefly to
York.
visit because I was going to go to... No, I had left Pittsburgh after my sophomore year, although I think I came back... I think I stopped in Pittsburgh once to visit my friends on route back to San Francisco. And then from San Francisco, I came back to New York briefly just to visit family, and that's when John Michael called me, and he said, no, you can't go back to San Francisco. Because Earl is another story.
Do you know where the conversation, where John walked into the church and was frisked?
Yeah.
Cleveland?
No.
Pittsburgh.
Yes.
In Pittsburgh.
And I will not mention the denomination Anglican. I didn't say it. It just got out of my mouth.
What was the denomination?
Anglican. I'm sorry, they deserve it. But you know what? Thank you to them. Because if not for that horrible experience, wow, my life would not have been changed. Which gets back to thank you to my parents as well for forcing me to go to Carnegie. If I hadn't gone, I would not have met my best friends in the entire world. I would not have been in God's help. And the song Marigold Song, which was sitting in my guitar case, which was never used, would then not become by my side. And the story of that is very brief. Because we were children, John Michael wanted us to do what we had done as children in kindergarten, which was do 20 minutes of show and tell before each improvisatory rehearsal. Which was, I don't know if you ever played that as a child when you were going to school, but we would come in with stories or songs or whatever in kindergarten. I would make things up. I have no idea what I'm talking about. But we would come in each night for 20 minutes and do the same thing. As children, we had to be 5-year-olds, and tell stories or whatever. And I played the song for Gilmore. And she said, God, we should bring that in for John Michael. I said, really? So we brought it in. She loved it. I taught it during her 12th string. She came up with this gorgeous harmony. We came in the next night to rehearsal. We played it for him. And John Michael, I'll never forget that moment. It was amazing. He just sat there and he went, I know exactly where that should go. That's going to go there. In the stoning scene. God, that's perfect. I was like, really? All right. Yeah, it's in. Boom. It was in the show. And it was the only song when Stephen Schwartz was then hired after La Mama, because we only had 8 songs originally, which were written by, I have to give him credit because we love him, Dwayne Bollock, who wrote the original music, and because there were no shows off-Broadway or Broadway at that time that had contemporary music. Even the shows about teenagers like Bye Bye Birdie and Hair were more theater pop. It was not what you were hearing on FM radio. Dwayne's music was much more complex. It was very rangy. I still use it, frankly, as my warm-up singing material, the original gospel music. And Stephen Schwartz, he knew we loved. We were very, very attached to it, but it was not hummable. Our producers, when they came to La Mama and saw it, they just said, where's the dawning of the age of Aquarius? I can't hum any of these things. He said, I don't know. So they had heard Pippin. They didn't want the show Pippin at the time, but they loved Steve's music. Not knowing that Steve was a friend of ours. It was hilarious. So they hired one of our friends. Not knowing he was our friend.
Going back a little bit, what did you know?
And Steve kept by my side.
What did you know of the show in Pittsburgh?
Very little. I knew it was very formative. I mean, I heard from some of the actors.
Which happened before you got involved.
Right. It was his senior project, which, God bless Larry Corral and Leon Katz, because they made that possible. Because the mere fact that a musical even happened was Carnegie was incredible. And the fact that the original show, because Steve Schwartz, 4 or 5 years before had not been able to work on Pippin in the department, so it was amazing. Very little, because from some of the actors from one actor, it's okay to say this because she said she spent every rehearsal crying. She said, I don't understand what this is. I don't understand what we're doing. Because they were basically, John Michael was so conceptually brilliant, which is why we were so fortunate to have Steve in the third incarnation. Because Steve was, did people know this? He was a directing major, not a music major. So we had another director, and he was a completely different director from John Michael. John Michael was brilliantly conceptual. My joke about John Michael was that you had to have worked with him at least once to understand what the hell he was talking about. Mainly it was sort of, because he handpicked us from Mama, he'd worked with all of us. But I said when I worked with him on a project at school, I sat there while he was giving me direction. He spoke for 20 minutes, and I just went, so you want me to get up and walk down stage and sing? It's like, what is he talking about? So you had to have worked with him at least once to have gone through a process because he was very dense and very, very conceptual. Steve was an editor as a director.
Give us Steve's last name again.
Schwartz. Sorry, that's right.
Yes.
We had 3 Steves, so we used to always use last names because we had Steve Reinhardt, who was amazing, who wore 5 hats, Stephen Nathan, and Stephen Schwartz. Right. So when Steve was brought in for the third incarnation, which was Cherry Lane, it was because the producers that we picked, Lansbury Brew, just when they said, this was the other, along with the guy who looks like the chick from Folly's younger brother, for the poster. This was the only other creative battle we lost. They just said, look, we can't hum any of these songs, so it just needs more accessible music. And then, of course, they brought in Steve Schwartz, not knowing he was a friend. So,
now, had Edgar and Joe Baru seen the show in Pittsburgh?
No. So the show in Pittsburgh was very rudimentary because John Michael was, as I said, very conceptual, and he was figuring it out. And because the majority of the cast that he had in Pittsburgh were not singers, they weren't musical people, they didn't understand. As one of them said to me, what the hell he was talking about. They still managed to create a seminal structure for us at La Mama that made it possible for us to not start completely from scratch. So we had a seminal structure to work with, which we then blew open. And we improvised for 6 weeks because, again, he handpicked 10 people that he had worked with before.
And how many of them are coming from Pittsburgh?
Well, it's okay to talk about this.
This was Bob Ari and
No,
Sonia. Oh.
no. All right, so that's what I'm saying. I'm trying to be diplomatic, but what the hell. Okay, so Earl, who didn't allow musicals to be worked on within the department, otherwise Pippin would have been worked on within the department, also didn't want any of us to receive credit for outside work. Lambda Rata, okay. ACT was a huge issue. So he basically threatened all the seniors who were in it and said, if you go, you will not graduate. In fact, John Michael, he didn't want him to graduate. He wouldn't let him graduate. Sonia only, 2 years ago, received an honorary degree from Peter. Yeah. So Earl said, if you seniors leave, forget it. You will not graduate. Juniors, you will not receive credit. So they were terrified. And except for, thank God, Sonia, Robin, and David said, you know what? This is an opportunity. This is New York. It's crazy. We're going. So.
And the La Mama
That's
happened.
too much. I didn't use any expletives, so I managed to.
How long after Pittsburgh did La Mama happen?
Very fast.
Almost
immediately. So with Rob and Sonia, in other words, I came back in January to visit. They had just finished. I think they had a 2 or 3 weeks rehearsal process. They only, Carnegie, it was a studio production, so it was like maybe 1 or 2 weekends that they performed it, and that was it. That's what I brought them to Christmas break. He then got the opportunity at the beginning of January. Earl was definitive about, he threatened everybody, basically said, John Michael, you're not going to get your degree.
They were all still students at the school.
Oh, yeah.
And give us the last
So
name.
this was, okay, so
The
it
last
happened at
names
the
of
end of
those
first
three actors.
semester.
Uh-huh.
This was the beginning of second semester, technically, which would have been my senior year.
Okay.
So the three rave actors who left were David Haskell, beloved David Haskell, Sonia Manzano, who then, of course, went on to become Maria in Sesame Street forever, and Robin Lamont.
And
Uh-huh.
and now you're at La Mama. What space are you in at La Mama?
Oh, so great. So they gave us, so for the first 2 weeks, we were improvising at John Michael's Loft on Christie Street. And this was really interesting because we had an enormously huge space.
We had an apartment in New York.
His lover did, yeah.
Oh,
his
okay.
lover did. So we had an enormously huge space to work. And we had, collectively, we were so lucky, we had a weekend of workshops with the Living Theater when they came through Pittsburgh. My sophomore year, Sonia and Robin, and David's freshman year. So we did 2 days of workshops with them, which blew open our idea of improvising.
In Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
With Judith and Julian. And, uh-huh.
I don't even have words to describe that. I had never seen theater like that. Was the old ski bus still there when you were there?
I think
With the auditorium?
I think it was
The glass,
yes,
all ski
yes,
bus.
yeah.
So this was in the auditorium where we used to have the TGIFs and where Stephen also did Pippin. So we did the workshops with them in that auditorium space for 2 days, and then they did their performances on that stage. And I just had never seen theater like that in my life. Because I had only seen Broadway shows. So and then we did 2 days of workshops with them, and that taught me to improvise. Mm-hmm. They taught us improvisatory techniques, which John Michael used, for God's will. So our improvisations were extremely physical, mostly nonverbal, and occupied a tremendous amount of space for the first 2 weeks. And we took the seminal structure that everybody had created at the previous workshop at Carnegie, and then we just used it as a seminal structure, and then we blew it apart. And then we opened up every single parable, and we improvised it, first non-verbally, and because we were figuring out who was going to do what, and we were allowing things to open up and happen very, very organically, and also clowns are non-verbal. So we were using this as an improvisatory exercise in this enormous space for 2 weeks. And then they moved us to another enormous rehearsal space on Great John Street. And the reason why I'm emphasizing the enormous aspect of the space was the stage that we were performing on at the Mama was like a postage stamp size compared to. So after we had been working on, working and inhabiting these enormous spaces where we were creating these moments, these scenes where John Michael, every time we would create something that he knew he wanted to be, like so many people have asked me, how did that thing happen with Jeffrey lying on his back and Stephen looking down and going, this says kids. And I said, well, that came out of, and then this came out of, and that came out of, and this came out of. And so every time one of these moments would happen, John would say, we're keeping that, we're doing that. But then when we moved to the stage, everything had to be, so our first rehearsal was moving everything into taking this enormous thing and making it this size. And I'll never forget how interesting that was. Which brings me to, which is one of the reasons why May 17th is so important to us. I didn't think the show was crap, but I thought it was a wild mess. I thought we needed at least another 2 weeks. We've been improvising for 6 weeks, and I just thought, we need at least another 2 weeks. I don't even know what we have here. This is so crazy. But we had to open. That was it. So I will never, never, never forget that opening night. I can't even remember the date.
At La Mama.
Yeah. Maybe it was February 26th or something. I'm not sure. We've been present
What's
for
the
6
year?
weeks. It's 71. We started January 18th. I think maybe we opened February 26th. I have a program somewhere that someone found for me. And I will never forget at the end of that, after all that, but before that, actually, this is one of my seminal memories because we walked out after taking this enormous show and making it this size. And we walked out, the 10 of us, it's the dead of night, it's winter, going to Phoebe's, of course, and we were walking out together. And I suddenly had this moment. I can't say it was powerfully intuitive. I don't really know what it was. I just remember thinking, wow, it's just the 10 of us right now.
Say that again?
Just the 10 of us right now. Nobody knows anything about us. It's just us right now. And I want to remember this moment because it's just us. I don't know how else to explain that. Just no one knew anything about us. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. We're going to open. This may be nothing. This could be something. But right now, it's just the 10 of us. And just remember this moment. And sure enough, the next night we opened. And this I will never forget. We had always an egalitarian curtain call. 10 of us holding hands, bowing, and just bowing down. And I will never forget this. Because I remember I had a lot of trepidation opening night. So I remember thinking, God, I think it's a piece of crap. I just think it's a wild, total mess. I think I was watching some of the other extraordinary things that were in rehearsal at the Mama that were so good and so clean. And I thought, we're a mess. This is crazy. This is just going to be crazy. But I will never forget that curtain call. We held hands. The 10 of us held hands in our little clown outfits, and we bowed down. And I actually have a photograph from the Mama, the 10 of us. And I heard thunderous applause. And I will never forget this. I remember looking up, and they were on their feet, and they were crying, and they were applauding. And I remember just kind of going, it's like, oh my God, it must be good. Look at that. This is weird. So I think we only played there for 2 weeks, but then we were like, everybody came. The creators from Hair, whom I'd had a huge crush on for 4 years. That was like really exciting. Tom O'Hargan came, and nobody knows who he is. Google him.
You were using Stephen Schwartz's music in your music now. Not yet.
No, this is
not yet.
Dwayne Bollock, the original. Dwayne wrote 8 songs. I added 1. Jeffrey added 1. Jeffrey Milet. So there were 10.
How long was your Mama run?
2 weeks, but we were just, I don't know how word of mouth spread. I don't know if Ellen Stewart got on the phone. I don't know what happened, but we were just sold out every night. It was packed. And people were coming from all the other off-Broadway plays. Like across the street was amazing on 4th Street, the Truck and Warehouse Theater, where House of Blue Leaves was playing. I mean, they were just like, everybody was coming from everywhere. But for me, the really, it's like the moment. I didn't get up the courage to go over to them, and I had such a huge crush on them ever since I was a kid. We're the creators of Hair, and Galt McDermott, and the 2, James Radham and the other one, Jerome Ragney. I had such a crush on when I saw the show 100 times. And they were standing there, and they were so effusive, and they waited afterwards to meet all of us. And I thought, oh my God, because I was like 20 years old. But we just suddenly had 3 offers. We had an offer to go directly to Broadway. We had an offer to tour from another producer, and then there was Lansbury Brew, who said, Cherry Lane, total creative control. So we took them.
And so what?
And then Stephen.
And what was then the next step?
Again, they couldn't stand the music because they thought it wasn't hummable, and they brought in Steve, and Steve came to see it. I think Steve saw it the last night. They had no idea that Steve was in front of us. It was so funny. And then Joe came in. We had a meeting with Joe in the theater, and he said that he wanted to bring in this young composer, and I knew about Pippin. There were posters had still been up in that auditorium in Skibo for Pippin the year before I came there. So I knew about that. We all knew about that because we knew Steve. So they said, we want to bring in this, this kid who's, because we feel the music needs a makeover, et cetera, et cetera. And so it was so funny. So we had a month off. And Steve always says, I love this, he always says, I was so young, I didn't know that I could do what I did, so I did it. And that's how we felt. We never had, people said to me, did you ever have any doubt about your ability to create the show or, do the choreography collectively? We didn't have a choreographer. We were collectively the choreographers. Did you ever have any confusion or any doubt or any fear that you couldn't do this? And I said, never. I said, I don't know where that came from. We just thought we could. We were young, and we just thought we could. So it never occurred to us that we couldn't. That's what Steve said. He was asked to basically write, to not just replace the 8 songs that were there, or 9, mine. He tried to replace mine. He's so sweet. He said, I really worked really, really hard, Meg, to come up with something better than yours. And he said, I couldn't, so I kept it. Which, for a young composer, for his first show, to be that generous, it was amazing. It was amazing. It's a true story.
So you had a month off while Steve was writing music.
Yeah, so he not only was writing 8 songs, he then wrote an additional 5. He created 5 additional songs because they wanted it to be more of a musical. I think we only had Turn Back on Man was a ballad originally, and there was On the Willows, my song, Jeffrey added once, we maybe had 4 songs.
Was there trepidation on the part of the cast as to what you were going to be getting at the end of this month?
Yes, we were terrible to him. We were horrible. It was awful. It was so mean. It was terrible. So we congregated. We got all back together because I said, we were 10 extremely entitled, frequently naughty children, but unbelievably entitled. It was like our show. We created the show. Don't tell us what to do. That was basically our attitude. So we congregated at Edgar's house. And poor Steve, oh my God, this is so bad. Steve loves telling this story, which is so mean, but then it's well-deserved. He played through the score, and we had 2 new cast members who were just heaven sent. Joanne Jonas came from Steve. He had known her, little 19-year Joanne. He'd worked with her in Summer Stock. And Lamar was a gift from Ellen Stewart. And I don't even have words enough to describe, first of all, how much I loved the 2 of them, but it was so hard for them because the 8 of us had been in school together. We had been through so much together. Many of us had been in love with each other, and those who hadn't been weren't wasting time falling in love with each other, but we had been through so much together at Carnegie. We had been through so much together with the process of the show. We were unbelievably close. We still are. And so for 2 completely new people to come into this mix and to fit as perfectly as they did, not just in terms of their talents and gifts and their contributions, but to fit in with us socially, considering we were such a tight-knit, they were gifts. So Lamar and Joanne sang through the new songs, and Steve sang the rest of them, and we were terrible. It was like the producers, like this. And then, because Turn Back on Man had originally been Robin's solo, it was a ballad, it was a gorgeous ballad. And poor John Michael, he turned to Robin and he said, "Oh, it's going to be his song now." And Robin sat there just crying with tears. And I just sat there like, "Are you going to replace my song, you mother?" And he was like, "No, he's not going to replace my song." It's like I was waiting to see he's going to take my song. Poor Steve, poor little Steve. He was so, people don't realize, I say he's an oyster. He's got this outer shell, he's a little pearl inside, and he was like, he just was sitting by the piano going, "Believe me, believe me." It was very, very bad. But then we came to rehearsal the next day, and it was such an open process. By that I mean, we were all the choreographers. There was even though Stephen Reinhardt was technically the musical director, and Stephen Schwartz was seeing where we were vocally to decide who should be doing what, it was still a very open process in terms of us coming up with our own harmonies. It was a very open process in terms of choreography. One of Steve's favorite stories is, "Peg, take the girls over there and come up with something for Bless the Lord." It's like, "Okay, sure." So it was a very open process, and we were insanely fortunate to have Stephen Reinhardt, who came from Stephen Schwartz, who was not only the lead singer in On the Willows, piano player, musical director. He was a trained dancer in every dance discipline like Joanne. So all the crazy, insane things that we came up with, because we were clowns, the choreography had to be funny. They helped to make it funny. In other words, they figured out the logistics of how to do the things we wanted to do. And one of my favorites was Sonia, who basically choreographed most of All for the Best, because we all knew how to tap. We had all been through ballet and tap as kids. And she said, "Yes, but before we know how to tap, we fake tapping. We kind of, and we just stomp our feet in the ground. Because we had to be clowns." So she said, "Here's how we're going to do it." And she got us all in a line. And we had to, it's sort of like when the Star Spangled Banner, and then you have to sing it like a child who doesn't. "Oh, say he is a flea." You come up with. So we had to then become children with everything. And so all the choreography had to be funny. And so we had Steve and Joanne but they never received credit as dance captains. We didn't have that because it was a collective. It was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. And Steve was great. So we fell in love with his music in less than a week.
Mm-hmm.
In less than a week. It was so great because it was such an open process. I don't know how to describe it. It was such an open process. Yes, there was the delineation of roles, but not really.
Was book changing?
Was what?
Was the book changing as well as you added the
Oh,
songs?
so this gets back to what I was talking about earlier. So John Michael, who was brilliantly conceptual, couldn't cut anything. Couldn't cut anything. And Steve, who was an editor as a director, because we had 5 additional songs, Steve basically said, okay, you know what, Act 2 is 3 days long. So we've got to get it down to 45 minutes. And as a result, we had parables in there. He said, so Act 1 is this exploratory children in a playground acting out parables. It's kind of a clown show, review. It's not really a book musical. He said, let's make Act 2 more of a book musical. Let's make it more structured in that respect. So Steve, as almost without credit, became co-director, and he started making massive cuts, which is one of the reasons why people ask me why was a verse cut from By My Side, and it was because Act 2 was 3 days long. And he came up to me and he just said during previews, he had this cute little sad look on his face, and he said, Peggy, we've just got to cut a verse. I said, okay, this is going to kill you, but we're going to cut your favorite verse because it's expositional. So we'll cut the thing about sticking my eye in the flower. I don't know how to do that anyway, for God's sake. He said, no. I said, it's the prettiest verse musically. I said, yes, I know, but it's expositional. And I said, we'll move on to the getting up with the putting the pebble in my shoe. We'll get on to it. So it was very collaborative. It was amazing. I always say it was the best and the worst experience to have as your first experience, because it made me realize after that I really needed to write. I needed to write and I needed to compose, because I thought, when am I ever going to have the opportunity after that as an actor to create my own character, sing my own song, create my own choreography? I choreographed By My Side. I did all of that. Have that much creative control as a 20-year-old in anything else ever. I'm not. So I thought, I need to explore the other disciplines that have sort of been on the back burner.
And you're playing the character of Peggy.
Yeah. And it's so cute because in the last month, I've been corresponding with 2 actresses, one in Indiana and one in Illinois. We're both playing my clown in productions there, and they had so many questions. They were adorable. And so I made myself available to answer their questions and to give them a sense of why I'm having to sing about daring myself toward the end of Act 2, when this guy just risked his life to save mine. Why would you be like, dude, wait up, I'm coming. Why, great. Why do you have to sing about gaining courage toward the end of Act 2 when he just risked his life to save yours? Which was why I loved Uzor Dubrow, who did the song and the Broadway production, but she didn't do anything else I did in the show, and she was such a bold character that one of the people who had done my clown, who basically said to me, Jesus, your clown isn't even in the Broadway revival. I said, well, this guy, look, he was given free rein to do what he wanted to do, so. But they said, but why is she singing about having to dare herself when she's been such a bold character throughout the play? And I said, well, that's one of the through lines that one has to think about if you're singing about having to dare yourself. Why do you have to do that? So these cute little girls asked me, why am I doing it? And so I explained the character through line from the very beginning.
Talk a little bit about your financial relationship to the show.
Okay, so I loved one of these questions. Did I have to do other jobs and waitress? Okay, so here's the deal. So we, the original 10, which is the other reason why we went with Lansbury Brew, collectively owns 15% of the show as the Godspell Commune Company. Yeah, because we co-created the show, for God's sake.
10 actors.
Yeah, we co-created the show.
Mm-hmm.
We were like, you're just getting a jewel. You guys are so lucky. You should be thanking us every day. That's basically what we were doing. So we got an agent, and we snuck out in our clown costumes. God, it was so funny. In between shows, and we went to this drugstore on 7th Avenue, so Cherry Lane, in our clown costumes, to this notary public who I will never forget the look on his face, with a contract that our agent had given us to have him sign. He was like, it was the West Village, but it was like 10 people in clown costumes, clown makeup, asking him to sign a contract. And he was just, I'll never forget that. It was the funniest thing. And we gave the contract to our agent at the time, Clifford Stevens, who then started negotiating with Joe and Edgar. And we just basically heard Joe screaming, in the theater downstairs. We were upstairs kind of giggling while Clifford was very calm and Joe was screaming. But that was the deal. We collectively owned 15% of the show.
And
And then in addition to that, of course, By My Side.
In addition. And then John obviously got his director.
Okay, so how this works is, this was an unusual situation. Usually it's thirds, book, music, lyrics, because what was the book? It was the Bible and our additional dialogue. They did a 50-50 split, which was interesting because the only original lyrics that Steve wrote, all the lyrics are hymns, with the exception of my song, All for the Best. I'm missing one or two others. Learn Your Lessons Well. I'm not sure about that, actually. All the others are hymns. So they couldn't do a three-way split, so they did a 50-50 with John Michael and
Word
Steve.
for word hymns?
Yeah. All of them are hymns. Save the People, Bless the Lord, We Beseech Thee. They're all hymns, all of them, except for All for the Best. What am I blanking? Oh, Turn Back a Man's Hand. They're all hymns.
So this is quite a
So
good...
those Anglican people came in handy. They came out a little handy.
This is quite a good financial relationship compared to other relationships that were being made at the time for other shows, right? I mean,
I don't think they had much choice, truthfully.
Chorus Line and...
Well, Chorus Line used our contract, so our contract became the boilerplate for subsequent productions where actors were directly involved in the creation of the show. I would get calls for years afterwards from producers who wanted to see our contract, which goes on for pages, because it became the boilerplate, which is an extremely important thing to get right, which is why I'm pushing Carol's book, The Godspell Experience, above the other three, because one of them was written by somebody who was a very sweet man, but he got it so wrong, and he interviewed me, and he still got it wrong. And it's a very important thing to get right from theater history, because we change things for future actors who were involved in shows where they were directly involved in the creation of the show. Now, you could either get your percentage out of the producer's share, or you could get it out of the creator's share. We elected to get ours out of the producers. So that meant for the run of the show, plus 10 full years after the close of the first class production, the Godspell Commune Company, we got a collective 15%. I think my individual percentage was 1.5%. It was really great. And then, of course, By My Side. So 10 full years after first class production closes, all the rights revert to the creators, which is Steve Schwartz, John Michael's estate, Jay Hamburger, Peggy Gordon. So getting back to that question, did I luck out? Because my parents forced me to go to Carnegie, and I made the best friends of my life, because I not only got 15% of that show for 20 years, whatever it was, I still get money from By My Side.
Right.
All of this, I think somebody told me we are after Oklahoma, we're the most produced show in Stockton, which I find really weird, but okay.
Did you have other jobs in New York? He didn't need them.
I was so lucky. And I knew how lucky I was. I mean, I just thought, oh my God. I mean, I was, just sitting on my ass making $50,000 a year in 1973, with $50,000 was a hell of a lot more than it is now. So I could really pick and choose what I wanted to do. I was so lucky.
And you were doing, how long were you with the show at the Trade?
I think to get our percentage, part of the contract was we had to work a full year and a half. Was that right?
Wow.
So we started in January at La Mama. We opened Cherry Lane today, May 17th. And then we moved up to, we did every TV show. In fact, on my YouTube channel, which has all the clips of Godspell, I also have the clip from the Today Show, I couldn't get the clip from the Tonight Show, which was frustrating because there's no videotape, unfortunately. But I did get the clip from the Today Show with Barbara Walters and Hugh Downs, which was amazing. So because of this Jesus Street movement, because this was a huge news thing, not only did we get incredibly great reviews from everywhere, from everyone except Clive Barnes, who found us nauseatingly platitudinous or nauseating and platitudinous, I'm not sure. But then on Sunday, Walter Kerr in the Arts and Leisure section loved the show, so Clive Barnes was the lone negative voice, but we were sold out. But then we did every TV show. We did Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. We did everything. But the Today Show was really interesting. We performed for 2 hours, but they were doing a huge news focus on this Jesus Street movement. And it's so interesting watching the YouTube channel now because Barbara Walters says, if you're offended, this is before we were about to come on and perform, if you're offended, just please, try to keep an open mind. And we did get hate mail. We got hate mail not from Europe, but we would get hate mail from the Bible Belt. Or Robin would. It was sort of like hate-love mail. It's like, we saw you in the day, you're so cute, but I hate you. But it was like, because she was so cute. But Barbara Walters and Hugh Downs interviewed us. It was so cute. And they asked us all these questions. And we were sort of like, yeah, we were kids. We were kids. But it's so cute watching it because we just had the greatest time. We just done a 5-show weekend. We got 2 minutes of sleep. We got up the next morning in our clown costumes and went to the Today Show for 2 hours. But the interview questions, and when we watched the news segments, they were really interesting because this was a huge news story. But when we did the Today Show in July, the phones ran off the hook. And Cherry Lane is such a... We were already sold out months in advance because of the reviews. But it was crazy. So we moved uptown to what was the Promenade at that time. And is now, I think, it's a condo or something. I'm not sure. But
Sephora makeup.
We wanted to stay, we wanted to stay on Broadway. We could have gone to Broadway.
So you moved up to the Promenade Theater in this neighborhood, Upper West Side.
72nd.
Did you have to do a lot of changes to the place? It's a bigger stage.
It is. Cherry Lane was this, Promenade was that, and I'll never forget when we went up there, because, I had to change something. I used to do this little dance at the end of the seed parable, and, it was this cute little happy dance, and I'm crashing to the fence, but the fence was now all the way over there. So it was going to take me twice as long to get over there. So I ripped off something from somebody else that was so cute, which was so perfect for my character, where I just, I would finish after trying to empower myself to do this thing, and because I was so timid, I was so scared, because I had to justify to the audience why I'm singing about having to dare myself in another hour and a half. So I was so scared, I was so timid, with like people and everything. So by the end, I was like, it's fun. I remember nobody would sing me, I just went. And of course the audience would start to applaud. So it saved, because it was like, I can't get over there. The fence is over there now. So there was no way to do that. So we made those kinds of adjustments because of the space. It's interesting.
Who were the other artists you wanted to emulate in your...
First of all, wow, ACT. How do I even... Again, Ellis Rabb. Renee Auberjonois was there. Michael Lerner, who then went on to do that TV show about the Waltons. She was a powerhouse. I mean, you can't tell the full range of what she can do from that show, which is not to diminish her amazing work in that show, but she was... And Kitty Wynn, Kitty was my god. Kitty was 26 years old. I was 19. Kitty was so amazing. And Angela Patton was another one of the actresses. I mean, it was just... Angela went on to do a lot of very funny small parts in films. But Bill Ball's production of The Three Sisters to this day is the best I've ever seen because of his use of lighting and tableaus, but also the performance he would get with actors. And the other people there, Peter Dunne, Ken Ruda. I mean, so many people who just went on to have film and TV careers, but they were just the most generous, wonderful group of people. And, Bill was very, very eccentric. Yes, and they were huge, screaming fights, but they were always about creative issues because he fostered an environment that the actors felt completely free to explore and to be part of the collaborative process with him. So I used to sit there and watch. I mean, some of the... I remember Kitty once had this screaming fight with him on stage about this insane wig he wanted her to wear in The Tempest. And it was like this blonde thing that went on for 3 blocks. And they had this huge screaming fight about it. And I think she won. But I remember thinking to myself, they're not... We had similar fights with Gonspell, but they were always about creative issues. We weren't angry with each other. And in the same way, nobody felt threatened at ACT the way many of us felt threatened as students at Carnegie. Nobody felt threatened because they were creative arguments about creative issues. Everybody's job was secure. But it contributed to an environment where everybody was doing their best work. So, as a young actor, I would just sit there and watch. And then the directors I learned from. Oh, my God. Nickel Jackson was my favorite. He went on to become the artistic director, I think, at a theater in New Jersey. I'm blanking on the name of it now. It's where not Emily.
McCarter.
Thank you. Nickel was, after Mark Epstein, Nickel he was life-changing for me as a director. And everybody just felt completely free to do their best work. So ACT was life-changing for me. And then there were so many actors as a result of watching these amazing performers, because ACT was run as a real repertory company, meaning there were 3 or 4 things happening in rotation at the same time. So we would do this play on Monday and Tuesday, we would do that play on Wednesday and Thursday, then we would do another play for the next 4 days. So it was a real repertory company, as opposed to doing one play for a block of time and then. So I got to watch and be involved with actors who were radically transforming themselves from Monday to Wednesday to Saturday.
And your mother was a fan of Dorothy Dandridge.
She wasn't a fan, she was a freak. God bless her. Loved that, because will the Gershwin family please release that movie? Please let the world see that film. I got to see that film as a pre-adolescent. Porgy Bess, Dorothy Dandridge, Pearl Bailey, Diane Carroll, Sweet Summertime. I mean, I remember every frame of that, but there was Brock Peters as Crown. And I said, he's so scary, he's terrifying. I was like, oh, everything was like, out, like that. And I was just like, and then 2 years later, we went to see To Kill a Mockingbird. And that trial scene, I always say, if you're a prospective actor, watch that trial scene. It's 20 minutes before there's a dissolve. Every performance by every actor in that trial scene is a clinic on how to act. Every single one. But then there was Brock Peters as Tom, who was radically physically different because he had an injured arm, the timbre of his voice was different, his speech patterns were different, everything was different. And I sat there crying, and my mother turned to me and she said, "That's the same actor." I said, "No." She said, "That's the same actor." And then, as I said, there was no rating system, so a few years after that, still as a kid, I got to see The Pawnbroker, which is still my favorite dramatic film. And Brock Peters was the cool, urban, menacing crime boss, pimp, Rodriguez. He was so scared in another whole cool, urban way. And he has a scene with, I'm blanking on the name of the actor who plays the lead, who was so brilliant. Oh, how can I be forgetting? He was, thank you, yes. And there's that scene where he's just taunting him. And it was another whole radically different performance. And I said, wow, I guess that's what acting really is. It's transformation. It's crawling into the skin of someone, which is why Bill Ball's approach was so interesting. It wasn't method. He worked from the outside in, not from the inside out. He said, so if you're playing an old man, let's get the body first. Let's get sit. Let's get you can't breathe. Let's get that person.
He worked from the outside in.
From the outside
With a
in.
Michael Chekhov approach.
Yeah. Which was so interesting, which was part of what I used with Godspell, because again, why did I have to think about having to dare myself? I was the only one in the first week. I was like, John Michael kept saying, Peggy, I'm not saying, what's your character? I said, I don't know yet. And it degenerated after about 3 days to him just going, damn it. And then gratefully, once By My Side was in the show, which was just at the end of that first week, thank God, because everybody else found a slice of themselves they wanted to comedically amplify into a clown character, but me, I was going. Once the song was in the show, she's sitting right near them. So I will be someone who suffers from an amplified comedic shyness that I have to gradually work my way through, so by the time I get to that point in Act 2, the audience will say, yeah, that's why she has to dare herself, because she's so scary.
And the artist William de Kooning was one of your investors.
Yeah, I mean, there was a great question here about the future of the off-Broadway movement, and I think our producers were able to produce Godspell for about $20,000. And they did something kind of, no, they did something kind of shady, although we love Joe. And it's one of the reasons why we won in negotiations with him ultimately, because they didn't want to pay us equity. And he said, how about if we just give you like $50 a week for rehearsal, and then we'll, so it was sort of this, we'll just give you $50 a week for rehearsal for the 4 weeks. And then, so we said, yeah, although we knew it wasn't equity, but we knew they had no money. They basically had no money. But they got money from him. They schlepped us down to New Jersey to this place where Stuart Duncan lived, and Stuart Duncan was the third partner. He was basically just a money person, but he brought in some money. He was able to bring in some rich friends who sat there and watched us in their living room, and they gave us some money. But we basically got money from wherever we could get money. But
was there a certain point when you became equity?
Yeah, because we knew, once this show opened, obviously, and we were a huge monster. We went to Sardi's that night, which is why the 17th is so huge, as opposed to our opening at La Mamba, where I think we went to Phoebe's, got drunk. I think that's what we did. I can't really remember. But our opening at Sardi's, and we sat there watching the TV reviews. We sat there watching it, and we were every review was just, I'll never forget, one of the reviewers on ABC, it was just, he was raving about my song. Got my name wrong, but he was raving about my song. We just sat there watching it, and we turned to each other and went, oh my God, this is good, right? This is good? We were sat there watching it, and our producers were just beside themselves. And then, of course, they got all the papers, aside from Clive Barnes. But we had a brilliant, this again, we were such a family and still are such a family. And we had such a collective group of people who were working with us and for us. And Ed Gifford was so brilliant. He was our PR guy, and he took all the great reviews, which were like, and not just in New York, in the tri-state area, but nationally. And because Clive Barnes said nauseatingly platitudinous and nauseating and plat. He said, well, maybe it wasn't my cup of tea, maybe it was somebody else's cup of tea. And they said, right you are, Mr. Barnes, with a full-page ad in the Times and all the great reviews, the whole page. It was unbelievable. The next day, it was just... So that was it. The phone was just ringing off the hook. And what was so funny was every celebrity in the world came to see us, but the only one that really impressed us, that we were like, was Fran from Kukla, Fran and Ollie, because we had grown up as kids watching that. And every major, movie star and TV star came, but there was Fran from Kukla, Fran and Ollie. She came back thinking, it's Fran! We were huddled around her. It was so cute, because it was our childhood.
At a certain point, Don Scardino came in as...
A couple of years after?
Few years after.
Okay, so you asked... Well, I did the show, I think, for about a year and a half. I think I was supposed to do the film. I got a wicked case of tonsillitis, which is Lamar's fault, but, that's another story. And so I was out that whole summer. I was out of commission. And it was just about at that point, I think Steve Nathan was doing 1776. Other people were doing other things. So the movie cast was kind of a conglomeration of some of the New York cast members, most of the New York cast members actually. And I'm not sure what was going on with Lamar, but Meryl came from Boston to do Lamar's part. They wanted Jerry from Boston. Meryl came from Chicago, from the Chicago company. They wanted Jerry to do Herbie's part, because Herbie's comedy was very broad. It was very physical. He was our best acrobat, and so his comedy was very big. And the director of the film, who's a very sweet man, but had never done a musical before, which is why he cut 2 musical numbers. He thought they were too lively, and we thought, Jesus, have you never seen any musicals? You think you see West Side Story? He thought they were too lively. Because people always ask me, why did he cut Jeffrey's number? We beseech thee and learn your lessons well, because he thought they were too. It was so interesting generationally, and we were, late teens, early 20s. He was in his 50s, so there was such a huge generational gap, also in terms of understanding. I'm not really sure how he got the job, honestly, but he was a very sweet man. But he really didn't understand the show at all, and so the whole the bigness of Herbie's comedy was a little scary to him. So Jerry did voices. Jerry was much smaller in terms of his comedy. Jerry had a million character voices that were hilarious. So I think it was all Godspell people. Some from New York. Meryl came from Chicago. Jerry was from Boston. I was out of commission. Sonia was doing Sesame Street, so she was out, which is why he moved Joanne from Joanne's part to Sonia's part, and Lynn had been our understudy for Joanne, so Lynn got to do the movie. So it was a hodgepodge. Victor came to do Jesus because I think Steve Nathan was still doing 1776, and Jack Warner wouldn't let him out of that. Even though he only had a few scenes, he was the mama,
Mama
look sharp person. So he was only in and out for a few scenes, but that was such a seminal moment, and Jack Warner wanted him for the entire shoot. So Victor, I think they had just opened in May in Toronto, and so Victor came to do the movie, and that's when Donnie was hired to do Jesus in Toronto, I guess that summer, 72. And then he was up there for, I have to ask God how long he was there, sure, but I think he didn't come to New York until 73. I think he did the show up there, and then came to New York in 73 when whoever was doing Jesus in New York left.
And by this time, there were lots of companies of Godspell all around the...
Yeah, we were like a monster hit. There were. I used to remember this. I think the first one to open, we had a New York second cast because the majority of us went to LA to open the show there, only for a few months. Then we came back to New York, so there was a cast hired in New York to replace us while we were in LA. We came back. Most of them stayed as understudies. Katie went to do Grease. She had been Robin's understudy. Although she wound up basically struggling to do my part in the film, which I think she does beautifully, although it wasn't the part she was used to doing. Katie went to do Grease, and the others stayed as understudies, although some of them then went to the Washington Company. I think that one was third. Chicago, I think, was fourth. I used to know this, which one was which number, but they all happened within basically the space of a year. There were 10 companies, which was incredible, because when we left LA, then they hired actors locally, amazing actors, to do the show there. And there was the San Francisco company, Chicago was individual, Toronto was individual, Washington, Boston, first national Boston tour. There were 10 altogether. And then London, Paris. Oh my God, I corresponded with my little Parisian counterpart for years, Armand, my beautiful little Armand. It was amazing. I had like a family of Peggy clowns. Valda, I've never met Valda, who did my role in Toronto. But we are pen pals. We've been email pals for like forever. She lives in London now. It's so cute. We just have this. I used to say the original cast, we were the basement of an infinite skyscraper. And so there are gazillions of us, and we are all still in touch. We are all still so close. Which is why Don Scardino and I hosted a 40th anniversary reunion party, which was so great. Which was amazing. Paul Shaver didn't even look at the sheet music and played through the whole show. It was unbelievable. We sang the whole show. We all remembered it. I started singing. I don't remember that. Oh, wait a minute. I remember. I turned to Steve Schwartz and I go, "Here's my harmony. I just found my harmony." Scary. But we were very well trained and very well drilled. And as I said, going back to the beginning of that thought, thank God for Steve Schwartz, because I love John Michael so much. But as I said, he could not cut anything. He was so conceptual, and he considered cutting the gilding the lily somehow, but that was the demand of moving from an experimental piece.
You mean Steve Schwartz or John Michael?
Steve Schwartz. John Michael couldn't cut anything, so Steve basically was so diplomatic. He was wonderful, but he kept saying to John Michael, okay, Act 2 is like 3 days long. We have to get it down to 45 minutes. You've got a lot of parables in there. Why? Why is this parable there? Why is that there? Why don't we try to make Act 2 more of a book musical? Because Act 1, we really were a hybrid. And we didn't want to change the hybrid character of the show. In other words, we knew our producers were nervous that the reviewers would say, is it clown show, is it a review, is it a musical, what the hell is it? Which is, I think, why Clive Barnes found us nauseating and platitudinous. But Steve was invaluable in that respect, because Steve basically said, let's make Act 2 more of a book musical. And let's only keep one parable that makes sense in the context of getting into the 11 o'clock number, which is We Beseech Thee. And so Steve was, God, I think about how young we were at the time. We didn't feel young, no. We felt old. You know, we'd all been so political. I was marching in the Vietnam Peace Parade at 13. We just felt old. We just felt like we'd been through so much of life already. It's like, don't tell me. Our producers were like, oh, who are you? You're so old. Don't tell me anything. You don't know anything. I don't understand what you're feeling. We're going through. But the most important thing to us was to honor John Michael's vision. You know, have we created something where at the end of 2 hours, people can either say, yeah, there is some spiritual sustenance in this, or you know what? Mm-hmm. So the most moving part to me always was intermission, when we would go out to the audience and give them a crappy line, and people would be sitting there crying. That was the most moving part. Or they would come up at the end of the show. They'd be waiting for us at the end, and they would talk about how they found something. Oh, it makes me, even to this day, it just makes me, it's like, oh. One of the little actresses I was just communicating with who was asking me so many questions, and I just said, here's her through line, here's her character through line, here's why she goes through this, here's why there's this moment, here's why there's that moment, here's why there's this. And her email to me at the end of her experience performing in the show, I'm keeping it forever, although they're all like that. But hers, Olivia, you're immortalized. Olivia wrote me the most beautiful email about how transformative this was for her as a person, because she found something in the process of, which is why I created this YouTube channel, because I just thought it's got to be a place for Godspell fans to go where they can watch these clips of the majority of the original cast doing scenes and watch the thing from the Today Show and just, you know, understand that what this show was and what it's still supposed to be is a very pure journey. As Sonia used to say in our group prayer huddle, let's take them on a journey. It's supposed to be a journey through this activity of what this person is purported to have said and done, to see if there's any spiritual sustenance there, period. And to see if it applies to one's inner life and one's outer life, without, as the New York Times review said of the revival, chockering it full of endless contemporary references just to make sure the audience still finds it relevant. Because they, as the reviewer said, if what Jesus is purported to have said and done isn't timeless, then there's no point to doing the show, which is the point of the show. It's timeless. It's the simple question. It's like when I'll never forget that moment at Le Mans when James Rado and Jerome Ragnar were standing there, and I had this massive crush for 4 years on Jerome Ragnar after seeing Hair, and I just like tiptoed, up, and I was kind of standing there, and I was hi, and I'll never forget that moment. And they were so sweet, they were so gushy, and they were wonderful. But they talked about what made them, what impelled them, the raison d'etre. Why do you need to create a particular piece of work? What impelled them to create Hair? They said there had to be a statement, there had to be something put out there that explained what teenagers were going through in the 60s, politically, socially. There had to be that. It had to be out there. People had to understand that this wasn't just rebellion for rebellion's sake, that this was really about something, culturally, politically. And so there had to be that statement made, even though it was so interesting, they weren't teenagers, they were in their 30s. In the 60s, but they hired all teenagers, the whole cast, right, in their late teens and early 20s, like us. Diane Keaton was 22. Mama Moore was 19. The whole cast was. Christy Shrimpton was 18. They were like us, 4 years before us. So that gets to one of your amazing questions, because Hair, chorus line, where did they begin? Off-Broadway, not on Broadway. Hamilton. So I love the questions because, do we feel that there is still a purpose for the off-Broadway movement? Absolutely. We could never have had the life we had if we had opened on Broadway. It just would not have happened. There was no reference for us. None. So that's one of the major reasons, in addition to getting the creative control that we were given by Lansbury and Peru. We just thought, this is insane. Let's take the best lateral move we can get from La Mama and go from there. Which is why after Cherry Lane, we could have gone to Broadway. Then the phone was ringing off the hook. We were sold out for months. We said, no, let's stay off Broadway. What was that other wonderful show with Ellen Green,
Little Shop of Horrors.
Thank you. They made the decision too. They stayed off Broadway. They stayed. I mean, certain things have a certain character. And I don't think you move to Broadway unless and until you have that, you've established your audience, bottom line. And Broadway is just more experimental, it is. And that isn't meant as a criticism of Broadway. Broadway has its gifts. But there are certain shows that simply, ours especially, would never have a life if we had not started off Broadway by choice.
And found your audience there.
Yeah.
And the play.
Yeah. Which is why Cherry Lane is still so, and Angelina Forlesi, who was in charge of the theater for years, it's like, we love the Cherry Lane. It's like our thing. It's like our little home. It's just, we just love the Cherry Lane Theater. Not that I didn't love the Mama. I felt so bad. I was such a kid. It took me years to. I gratefully ran into Ellen Stewart before the wonderful woman passed away. I said, we never thanked you. Oh my God, we were such little bratty kids. We never thanked you. Thank you so much. Because if not for the home you gave us and the absolute total creative freedom that you gave us, and the fact that you must have gotten on the phone, because how did all these other people know to come down and see us? We didn't call anybody. Thank you.
The Cherry Lane, when you were there, was not as large as it is today, right? You didn't.
It's exactly the same size. The entrance was different.
But you didn't have the building next door to it, did you?
No, it was the
house was
theater
the same
part.
size.
The house was exactly the same size.
And the audience entered from the street.
Yeah, it was the entrance is over here. The entrance was where there's some sort of a garage thingy. That's where you entered. You went out the stairs. There was our dressing rooms are upstairs, and that's my other. I have 1,000 memories, but that's Cherry Lane. This was my other amazing memory because, as opposed to La Mama, when I walked out on the street, well, it's just the 10 of us. Right now, nobody knows about us or whatever. Now I had much more of a sense when we were working at Cherry Lane. I had much more of a sense of what was going to happen. I had no idea, none whatsoever. Being a part of the Don't Trust Anybody Raspberry generation when you're 20, 30 is a million years away. I didn't think the show would have a life beyond our incarnation. The fact that it's still, that I still get checks from by my side, that I still every day get an email from a fan, which I'm more than happy to open myself up to that. That's wonderful. So that, no, I knew we were going to be successful. I just did. But my other, there were a million memories, but my other favorite memory was at the time at the Cherry Lane on the theater, you could walk up the stairs to the dressing rooms, and there was a little section where you could sit and look down, in the dressing room area, look down on the stage. And we used to, before our half hour, we would get together an hour before our half hour because our original production was very acrobatic, a lot of somersaults, tumbling. That Gilmer and Herbie used to do this flying cartwheel thing toward each other during Save the People. And every night it was like the precision perfection of it. Although they were so brilliant acrobats, they could do it perfectly, but they would do it funky with their legs bent, like silly, like clowns. But we would get together an hour before our half hour just to get together to collectively be together on stage and stretch and warm up and do splits and do all this other stuff. And I'll never forget this night because it was before our invited dress, and I'm my chest. I remember just sitting there, just feeling this overwhelming emotion. And Steve was, our musicians were above us on the stage, and Steve was up there just working on stuff with Pippin, which of course we all heard at school, which was so funny. And everybody else was just, hanging out together as we always were, and just stretching and doing cartwheels and doing all this stuff. And I sat there. I remember thinking to myself, I just said, make an emotional memory of this moment because you're not going to want to forget this. This moment you're going to want to hold on to this forever. This was incredible. And of course, our invited dress was just incredible. And then we did previews, which was insane. Because that's when Stephen was making massive cuts, which were great cuts. They were important cuts. And John Michael let him do it, which was great. Steve was 23, but he was like our calm. Saying to John Michael, okay, we just gotta cut this because John Michael's very emotional and very. Steve was like, yes, but here's what and Steve was like our Everything's going to be fine. Everything's going to be fine. And I said to him recently, did you really think everything was going to be fine? He said, no, I had no idea. He said, but he was like, you were all looking to me like, is everything going to be fine? I was like, everything's going to be fine. So we're making massive cuts every night and massive changes. And one of the funniest changes, somebody said to me, what was Gilmer's version of Learn Your Lessons? I said, originally, she sang it. Steve wrote it during previews for her. And she said, are you kidding me with these words, with this tongue twister? She sang it, and then she got kind of a sore throat just before we opened. And they didn't tell us they were going to do this, which we would frequently do to each other, which was naughty, very, very naughty. Lamar, who was sitting next to her on the table, who had the big operatic, Lamar had this extraordinary voice. Just before she was about to sing it, she was trying to save her voice for a Fox show weekend before we opened. David was standing next to Lamar. Oh, God. David put this rag up in front of Lamar's face, hiding Lamar's face, and Lamar sang Learn Your Lessons Well, and Gilbert was... And we were just, the audience was hysterical. The audience couldn't stop laughing. We couldn't stop laughing. And that was it. We kept it. So that kind of improvisatory thing continued until opening, and that's when Steve Schwartz went, all right, okay, you can keep it, but that's it. That's it. Once we open, that's it. The show's frozen. And then I said, so that was actually Gilmer's version of Learn Your Lessons Well. This is hysterically funny. And I have it, actually, on the YouTube. I have it. I will eventually upload it because it has to be seen because it's so unbelievably funny. But that was it. So once we opened the shows. But each cast then was given license to explore on their own. And they made incredible changes. Not to the structure, but to the content.
Script changes?
No, they were given permission to find their own moments of revelation. They were given permission to create their own alterations of character. Case in point, my replacement in LA, who's an amazing actress named Timothy Neer, who's now a director, she said to me, Peg, I don't think I can do the scared timid thing. Nevertheless, I really get why she has to be so off-center to make By My Side work. I really do. She said, so what about if it was hilarious. She said, what about if I do, oh my God, I'm so clumsy. I can't, I'm sorry, I meant that. I said, I'm just awkward. I'm just so awkward. And so she did this hilariously huge character who just was tripping over herself and constantly apologizing, like timid, meekly. I'm so, and it was so hilariously funny and so perfect. It fit all the beats that I created. Because Steve, in our libretto, Stephen Schwartz has written all those notes, and so both as a preamble and are woven throughout the body of the libretto. And his note before the seed parable is, whatever the character does, the actor does, they have to follow Peggy's character arc, which is, if you don't, begin by knowing nothing, and then you're taught everything moment by Jesus, then what is the point? So if you basically just use it as a platform for verbal commentary, then you're being a stand-up comic, which Steve says this is his best quote. It's not his first quote, but to me it's the first domino. You get this right, you're off to a great start. You get this wrong, you're in trouble. Quote, it is easy for the show to appear formless, which it was not, it was meticulously constructed. Or worse, for the 10 actors to degenerate into 10 stand-up comics, vying with one another for laughs or attention. This is the diametric opposite of what Godspell is about, unquote. So if your director reads that and goes, that's optional, I'm not going to do that, you're off to a really bad start. And we've seen this pattern play itself out over years with miracle results, because they're not supposed to be stand-up comics. Stand-up comics are by nature cynically knowing. They're observers of pop and political culture and make cynical commentary. That's their purview. They're hilarious. That's what they're supposed to do. That is the diametric opposite of what Godspell is about. So when Timmy said to me, how about if I come up with this character it worked. So that was the creative license that was given with each cast. They were given permission to then explore the context of the parables and come up with their own things. Case in point, Jerry, who wound up doing Herbie's role in the movie, was not a physical comic. He did voices. Herbie's prodigal son is unbelievably acrobatic. It's extremely physical. and incredibly acrobatic. But that was not Jerry. Jerry's was voices, and so Jerry came up with something completely different that worked. And Jeffrey Marlick was our second best acrobat after Herbie. So their prodigal son was wildly acrobatic. The actors in Boston came up with something different. I wound up stealing Carla Mar's thing for the sea parable because I couldn't crash into the fence anymore at the promenade. It was Carla who came up with, I have to credit her, it was her who came up with the whole, who came up with that whole thing, which worked for the character. So every single actor who was hired based on their creativity, as long as they had the skill set.
Let's take a little break.
Yeah, I totally forgot. Okay, so
let's talk about the prologue a little bit.
It used to be spoken. It was all spoken, long monologues, very, very long monologues. In the first two incarnations at Carnegie and La Mama, and Stephen musicalized it. I totally forgot about that. That was so important. So he not only had to write 13 songs in 4 weeks, he musicalized the prologue, which is a masterpiece, at 23 years of age. Because not only did he write individual musical sections for each actor, for all 8 of us, they then had to work together as a choral piece. Once we all started singing together, it kept happening. That was really what sold me. I don't think he had played the prologue when we had that horrible, producers thing where he was playing at the piano and we were all like, but when we heard the prologue, that was amazing. That was completely amazing. But that's when he said to me, "You're no longer Sartre, you're Thomas Aquinas, because you're the only one who could sing that part without taking a breath." I was like, okay. I loved it. That was, talk about challenging and exciting. And it made sense. It worked because the prologue had to be a comical, not just war of words, a physical eruption. It had to be an overt war. That is the entire purpose of the prologue. You see people fighting. It's a breakdown of order. There's no agreement. We all have our points of view about God and the universe. None of us are in agreement with each other. We fight. And at the end, the throwing of the garbage was extremely important because it wasn't just the verbal disagreement. There had to be a breakdown of the physical universe we were in and create this, clean, sterile, pristine fence with nothing going on into a stage that was full of garbage with people physically fighting. And then, of course, believe it or not, that was all strategically done because the garbage are props. So we had to know where everything that we were throwing. That's why when Steve's quote is so great, it's easy for the show to appear formless. It was not. It was so meticulous. It's like where I had the makeup hung on the fence every night. That is exactly where I had to hang it, or exactly where it had to be, because I had to get it at exactly the right moment, because I had to put the plank on the Saurus at the exact moment and get the makeup and hop up on the fence. So everything was absolutely perfectly timed, but designed to look completely spontaneous, as if nothing is staged. It's just happening in a completely spontaneous way. So Steve is amazing. He's 23 years old. He musicalized the entire prologue and wrote 13 songs in 4 weeks. And there were no changes needed. Everything was perfect. It was amazing. Nothing was changed. It just all fit. It was incredible. That's what he said. I was telling him I didn't know I could do it, so I did it.
Talk about Andre Arnott, who...
So the two huge, so here is why Godspell was the best and the worst experience to have as your first experience. As I said, I created my own character, sang my own song, did my own choreography, wrote my own dialogue. When was I ever going to get another opportunity as an actor to do that? I actually did get that opportunity when I was in my early 30s. Briefly, Martin Charting was doing a review. I can't remember if it was off-Broadway or on Broadway. I found out about it. I called him. I said, "Hey, do you need material?" He said, "Yeah, you got some?" I said, "Yeah, sure." I had nothing. I called Robin Lamont, who was an amazing songwriter and writer in her own right. Leslie Ray, who'd been a Peggy clown. With Donnie in New York after two or 3 years after I left. And we wrote for the next 2 weeks. We showed Martin about 6 things. He picked one. His thing fell apart. I can't remember why, but I thought, wow, this was fun. This was the most fun I've had since Godspell. This is the most fun I've had in 10 years. Writing my own stuff, performing in my own stuff, singing my own stuff. So for the next year, the 3 of us wrote while we were all doing different acting jobs. I think I was doing Loving, voiceovers, Robin was doing Ryan's Hope, whatever we were doing. We wrote for a year, and then we played it off-Broadway in different clubs. The Duplex, the Triad Uptown in the West Bank, Steve Olson, God bless Steve Olson, and Lou Black, who was the artistic director at that time at the West Bank, for 2 years. And that, for me, when I said, boy, this is the most fun I've had since Godspell, I really knew that, I just didn't want to be an actor anymore.
Now, the 4 writers were who?
The 4 writers?
You said there was 4 of us who were bringing
Robin
the
Lamont
together.
of Godspell fame, Leslie Ray, who was a Peggy clown, who went on to be a major TV showrunner after that, and me. So it was the 3 of us. It was 3 women. We called it Taboo in Review. We wanted to call it a probophobia, but we didn't think anyone would understand that. Thank you for smiling. Fear of approbation. We didn't think anyone would get it. So we just called it Taboo in Review. But it was the most fun I had had. So around that time, I was thinking very much about my influences. And my very favorite writer, and this has a lot to do with, believe it or not, with Godspell and with Taboo, my very favorite writer was Patty Chayefsky, because I thought not just how brilliant he was in content, the subject matter, what he chose. I thought his ability to move seamlessly in tone from comedy to drama and back again, without sacrificing the overall tone of the piece, as he did with Hospital, as he did with Network. I was stunned by that, because I thought, wow. In other words, he was capable, especially Hospital, capable of such extraordinary ironic humor that never sacrificed the moments of deep drama and tragedy, which there are in the movie Hospital. And then there are, of course, the things that break my heart that were also placed on Broadway, middle of the night. And I thought, well, there's no accident that this guy, yes, he started in television, but he also did a lot of theater, because all of his work is character-driven. So it was a combination of his seamless ability to move from drama to comedy and back again. His also amazing ability, and I don't mean this to sound sexist, although it will, but I feel the same way about Dostoevsky. He could write women really well. And I think it's really rare that men can write women really well. And I thought he could really do that he found unique voices for every single one of his female characters. I believed all of them. And I thought that was remarkable. And so I thought his ability to give each character a unique voice, his ability to move seamlessly from drama to comedy, his ability to find subject matter that is both deeply personal and powerfully political at the same time. Wow. He made a statement with every single thing he wrote, which I thought was extraordinary. So he was and still is my favorite writer. I have so many others, but he's still at the top of the list. Andre was one of my during my acting years, although the reason why Taboo was significant was it was really the bookend to my acting career, because I really realized when I was doing Taboo that this was the most fun I'd had since Godspell, and I just knew I just didn't want to be an actor anymore, just to be an actor. And financially, I didn't have to be. Lucky me, insanely lucky me. Andre was one of my favorite directors to audition for. He called me in for everything. I never got anything. And I thought, why am I always making it to the final callbacks? This guy's calling me for everything. I never get hired. I loved his work. I thought he was brilliant. And he was such a lovely person. And he was very significant for me because one of the last things I auditioned for toward the second year of doing Taboo, I was in my mid to late 30s, he said, again in another final callback, where again I didn't get it, he said to me, Peggy, you have this incredible ability to move seamlessly from comedy to drama and make it completely credible. And I stood there for a moment and I thought, is he explaining why he never hires me? Or is it a compliment? I wasn't going to, of course I knew it was a compliment, because he had a big smile on his face. And that was, talk about, boy, a fork in the road. That for me was the indication that I needed to change my path. I needed to change my direction. Because he literally described something that I didn't know I had, which was actually one of my favorite things about Patty Chayefsky. Because I think the ability to do that is amazing. It's like, I adore her. Judith Light, okay, she was an upperclassman when I was a freshman, and I just loved her. And again, we were all so close because of the cut system. There were so few of us. So we were all so bonded to each other. People don't know this, that Judy did Adelaide in
Guys and girls.
Thank you. She is so capable of wild, totally silly, eccentric comedy. And she is also capable of ferocious, meaningful drama. She did something. I have to ask her what the name of this thing is because somebody has a book of plays, and when we were there, one-act plays and stuff, that he brought to my Bob Ari. He said, "Hey, you were in this." I said, "Really? Was I? I don't remember any of that." But Judy did something in the studio theater that this director, Rena Shami, directed her in, where it was a deconstruction of her person. By the end, she was just this wild thing, hanging on to something with just like a wild. And I remember sitting there watching Judy and thinking to myself, if this chick does not wind up having a huge career, something's really wrong. Because of her range was incredible. But she's another one. She can move seamlessly from comedy to drama. And to me, that was, how do you do that? And I thought, okay, Andre just told me I have that. It's inherent. I'm not even aware that I can do that. But what an amazing thing, since that's one of my very favorite things when I watch that on stage. Lion in Winter. It gets back to the very first play I saw. One of the scenes between Robert Preston and, the scene where she's taunting about having slept with his father, between Robert Preston and Rosemary Harris, I don't even have words to describe. I sat there as a kid watching that, just going, wait, are they fighting? Are they not fighting? What's happening here? It was so amazing watching that scene because there's this, it's the same thing. They're moving between, not that the film version isn't great, the film version is great, but between Robert Preston and Rosemary Harris, watching that scene, I sat there and I thought, this is so multi-layered. There's so many things going on here in addition to the text. So that to me was my favorite thing. When I would watch people, still to this day, when I would watch people and I would stand there and I had much more of a view at the promenade than I did at Cherry Lane. But I would, in that moment when I would stumble and I would metaphorically put the invisible pebble in my shoe and I would stumble and I would get up and there would be that moment where I would struggle to stand and then I would stand and then I would fake bracing myself because, I had a pebble in my shoe. And I would stand there with my arms out singing about and I would just look out at the eyes and they'd be crying. And I thought, the first time I thought, why are they crying? It's a good thing. And Joe Baru he said, I can't watch you do that without crying. And I couldn't understand that. So this ability to move from comedy to drama and back and forth and have both be real and have both be true, I thought, I think I need to explore that in my work. I need to find how to express something that clearly is inherent for me that I don't even know I have because I admire it so much when I see it in other writers and when I see it in other actors. I think it's an extraordinary thing, and to make it completely credible.
Is there anything else you want to talk about before we finish?
Your questions were so
Final
good.
Thoughts.
I know. There was something at the end here that I absolutely loved. These questions were so great. Oh, I'm looking at a blur of red. I love this. What do you see as the future of the off-Broadway movement? Okay. I basically said, I know there are powerful financial concerns, more now than ever. Blah, blah, blah. We actually mounted Godspell for under $20,000 in 1971, and you can't even do a showcase for that amount of money now. But I'm confident, I am, that off-Broadway will never abandon, despite these terrible pressing financial issues, its historical mandate to keep pushing the envelope when it comes to content and form, exploring subjects that are contemporary, political, and cultural, because these stories need to be told. I feel very strongly about that. Because again, as I said, I don't think Hamilton would have had a life if he'd opened on Broadway, or Chorus Line, or Hair. And certainly we wouldn't have. And our producers were very smart. They didn't move us to Broadway until like the last 2 years of the run. Mm-hmm. So I think, again, it's not a criticism of Broadway. It has its purview, it has its purpose, and it's wonderful. But off-Broadway has a very, very unique mandate. Could the Living Theater have found a home on Broadway? I mean, when I saw them perform at Carnegie, I thought, I don't know what I'm looking at, but I love it, and I have to learn how to do it. That was all I thought. So yeah, I'm gonna leave with that note.